terrifying. Terrifying. Like, how is anybody going to stop this guy? Like, it was, and you think about when he first joined the UFC. I went through the other day and wrote some stats down because I remember those first 4 fights. It was almost unbelievable. I mean, he had those 2 fights on Fight Island. That was John Phillips and Reese McKee. 124 strikes to 2 and 68 to 0. I mean, 2 fights in the UFC. 2 strikes taken. Complete domination.
That word terrifying perfectly encapsulates the aura Khamzat Chimaev has built. When he burst onto the scene, it wasn't just impressive, it was genuinely unsettling for his opponents and utterly mesmerizing for us, the fans. Those early Fight Island stats? They tell a story of utter dominance that few, if any, have replicated in the UFC. 2 fights, 2 strikes absorbed, that's not just a good start. That's a statement of intent that screamed a new era of terror was upon the middleweight division. The question then becomes, can anyone really stand up to that kind of unrelenting pressure when it comes to the biggest stage against a challenge like Sean Strickland?
And like set this ripple through the MMA community of, this is the guy. This is the next person that's going to dominate the division. And obviously he's had health setbacks, etc., etc. He's had a couple of really interesting and close fights, but for the most part, he's just kind of smashed his way through, and he's done it in a way that's it's made it look so easy that it's left that feeling in people's mind. Like I don't have to remind you of him marching the leech across over to Dana.
The Chimaev hype train wasn't just a fleeting moment. It was built on a foundation of seemingly effortless destruction. Even with health setbacks and a few closer calls that tempered expectations slightly, he still maintains that feeling of inevitability. Think about the Li Jingliang fight, picking up a legitimate threat, talking to Dana White mid-grapple, then calmly finishing him. That's not just skill, that's an almost arrogant display of power that profoundly impacts how future opponents approach him. Sean Strickland will undoubtedly be feeling the weight of that reputation, but how will it affect his famously unconventional mindset?
Khamzat Chimaev comes out fully expecting to be able to dominate everybody in front of him. He's got this impenetrable belief that we see from very few fighters, that it's just like, I can do this. Like what? Like even said it to DC, like, and I think it was around the Usman fight. Like DC was like, "What? Are you just going to come out and like wrestle him?" I mean, he's former welterweight champ and X amount of qualifications wrestling, whatever. And Chimaev's response to DC was like, "What else am I going to do, brother? Like, this is what I do." His concept of fighting is complete domination from the get-go.
This clip perfectly highlights Khamzat's almost pathological self-belief. It's not just confidence, it's a deep-seated conviction that he will dominate, regardless of who is in front of him. His exchange with DC about Usman's wrestling pedigree is chillingly direct. "What else am I gonna do, brother?" encapsulates his entire philosophy. This relentless, complete domination approach has been his superpower, overwhelming opponents mentally and physically in the early rounds. But against a fighter like Sean Strickland, whose mental fortitude is arguably his greatest weapon, will this unyielding belief be his ultimate advantage, or a potential Achilles heel in a 5-round war?
First round is lethal. Second round is pretty dangerous. Hang on. 9 in the first round, 3 in the second round, 2 over 15 minutes and 1 over 25 minutes. That's Chimaev's record. So a 15 wins 9 in the first round. And the 9 that didn't get out, of the 9 that didn't get out the first round, 3 more were stopped in the second. So you're looking at 12 fighters out of 15 that didn't see the third round.
These numbers don't lie. Khamzat Chimaev is an absolute first and second round killer. 9 finishes in the first round, another 3 in the second, means the vast majority of his opponents don't even make it to the championship rounds. This statistic screams danger for anyone facing him, reinforcing that terrifying reputation. Sean Strickland knows this, and his entire game plan for UFC 328 will hinge on surviving that initial, suffocating onslaught. Can Strickland weather the early storm and drag Chimaev into unfamiliar territory, or will he become just another name on that list of early finishes? That's the million-dollar question.
Strickland, on the other side, has got a way more storied career. And I actually didn't realize that you go all the way back to the beginning of his career, and he went welterweight, middleweight, light heavyweight, and then he was a middleweight for a bit, and then he went back to welterweight, and then he's had a couple of catchweight fights, and his record's kind of all over the place. I mean, 30-7, it shows you that it's a storied career, but even if you break it down, I think it's interesting. Like, if you look at him as a welterweight, he's 6-3. It never really suited him as a welterweight. He's one of those guys that at one point in his career was kind of caught between two weight classes. He was not...
Sean Strickland's career path is a testament to perseverance and finding your optimal fighting ground. Many fans might not realize the extensive journey he's had across multiple weight classes, often struggling to find his footing at welterweight. This shows a fighter who wasn't just handed success, he had to grind for it, experiment, and adapt. This kind of varied experience, navigating different body types and styles in the cage, builds a specific type of resilience. It suggests that when faced with a challenge like Khamzat Chimaev, Strickland isn't easily deterred. He's already faced adversity throughout his storied career.
He was a big welterweight, but he was not really big enough to move up to middleweight. But since then, I mean, you know, seeing him last year training, especially during his suspension when, you know, he's spending his time snowboarding and building barbecues, he's still in the gym every day, and he is, I mean, he's massive. He's a huge middleweight now. Middleweights clearly are a much better weight class for him. Of his 7 losses, 3 of them were in the welterweight division. So as a welterweight, he was 6-3. As a middleweight, he's 19-4. That's a very different record, right? That shows you that he's...
This is crucial context for understanding the current Sean Strickland. His struggles at welterweight, being caught between 2 weight classes, ultimately led to him blossoming into the formidable middleweight champion we know. The commitment he showed, even during a suspension, staying in the gym and bulking up, speaks volumes about his discipline. The transformation of his record from 6-3 at welterweight to 19-4 at middleweight is a stark indicator of finding his physical prime and optimal division. This physically enhanced, more comfortable Strickland is the version Khamzat Chimaev will face, a fighter who is not only durable, but also naturally suited to the 185-pound division.
Look, he doesn't have, we've talked about it before, he doesn't have the nicest of styles. Like, he's not the prettiest of fighters to watch. I would rather watch Adesanya if I'm looking for crisp technique and slickness and stuff, but there's something about what Strickland does that's really effective, and he won me over last year as a fan, you know, especially, I mean, him as a fighter won me over the year before. As a person in the gym, he's a very different person. He works incredibly hard, and he's a very, very good team player, which means that he builds a community around him, people that show up to the training sessions for him.
It's true Strickland's style isn't always pretty to watch. It's unconventional, often awkward, and certainly not textbook slickness. But as this clip points out, it's undeniably effective. His transformation from a polarizing figure to a fan favorite, especially after his championship run, speaks to the power of his relentless, grinded-out approach. What's even more telling is his character in the gym, a hard worker and a team player. This aspect of building a supportive community around him is vital, as it ensures he always has dedicated training partners pushing him to the absolute limit. This intense preparation is what forges the durability Khamzat will need to contend with.
And that goes the same with, you know, if he's at Extreme Couture or he's at the Performance Institute. He has people that come to the gym to work with him specifically. And almost all of those sessions, it's about grinding, wrestling grinding, up against the wall, scrambling, building yourself up under pressure. So many little nuggets of information that he passed on to the fighters in the room that I actually realized he's got a real deep understanding of what he's up against. Now, whether he can stop it, that's a different thing.
This insight into Strickland's training philosophy is absolutely golden. It paints a picture of a fighter who thrives on the grind, constantly simulating the suffocating pressure he'll face against someone like Khamzat. The focus on wrestling, grinding, up against the wall, scrambling, is a direct countermeasure to Chimaev's primary offensive strategy. It's not about flash, it's about deep-seated knowledge of positional wrestling and endurance. While the commentator questions if he can stop it, understanding the problem is indeed half the battle. This intense, specific preparation gives Strickland a fighting chance to nullify Khamzat's strengths in a way few others can.
The Gilbert Burns fight was a big eye-opener. That was a 3-rounder. It was a barn burn. It was a great fight. He went down on one in that one. He got clipped, but he also got there was a clash of heads. Anyway, it was a great fight. The Usman fight was even more interesting for me because the first round came out. He was 100 miles an hour wrestling and just looked dominant. But as soon as the first round was over and Usman came into the second and defended a couple of takedowns, the fight started to feel a little different. You'll remember that was a majority draw. If I remember correctly, one of the judges had the first round 10-8 for Chimaev and the second and third 10-9 for Usman.
The Gilbert Burns and Kamaru Usman fights are the blueprints for how to test Khamzat Chimaev. Burns showed his chin and heart, pushing Khamzat to his limits in a chaotic slugfest. But the Usman fight is perhaps even more telling, especially how the momentum shifted after the first round. Usman, on short notice, not only survived, but started to defend takedowns and win rounds. This wasn't the terrifying Khamzat of old, who simply walked through everyone. It exposed a potential vulnerability. If you can withstand the initial storm and deny him his dominant positions, Khamzat can be outworked. This gives Sean Strickland a clear roadmap for survival and eventual success.
Is some kind of measurement of his energy. It can't be 100 miles an hour every time because that will run out eventually, especially if the guys start to get bigger. I mean, I know Alex Pereira's moving up, but imagine Alex Pereira, the size of him, and him having some wrestling ability, and Chimaev having to physically move someone like that over and over again. Like, the reason why he's smashed through people is because he's been so very effective in the early rounds. But it's going to take the person that beats him into the later rounds with endurance.
This is the core dilemma for Khamzat Chimaev in a 5-round championship fight. His relentless 100 miles an hour approach isn't sustainable against increasingly larger and more durable middleweights. While it's brutally effective in the early rounds, as seen against many of his past opponents, it's a gas tank question in a 25-minute war. The hypothetical about a large, wrestling-capable Alex Pereira highlights the physical toll. Strickland represents exactly this kind of physically imposing and durable challenge. If Khamzat can't finish him early, he risks burning himself out against a fighter who specializes in dragging opponents into deep, uncomfortable waters.
And this is where I feel like Strickland, there's a different quality to Strickland, that he is the underdog. He gets in there as the underdog. He was the underdog against Izzy. He's the underdog. I would imagine he was for most of his career in the gym as well, against the guys that were on the mats. He was the guy that would show up for sparring every day and just grind until he kept improving. So with that underdog mentality that Strickland's got, there is an element of acceptance of things not going your way, right? Now, the reality is Chimaev's not stopped anybody past the second round.
Strickland's defining characteristic is his underdog mentality, a quality honed through years of grinding in the gym and consistently being counted out in big fights, even against Izzy. This isn't just bravado, it's a deep-seated acceptance that things won't always go his way, especially early on. He's comfortable with discomfort. This mental toughness is precisely what's needed against Khamzat, who thrives on overwhelming opponents early. If Strickland can mentally prepare to lose the first round, maybe even the second, but still keep coming forward, he shifts the narrative from Khamzat's early finishes to Strickland's late-round dominance.
What I learned about Strickland in the gym is that he's very clever at all of the things that seem to be neglected in modern-day MMA, right? And this is why I can tell that he spent hours on the mat at Extreme Couture with just absolute veterans of the game, just grinding rounds out, is because he thinks of all the chin in the temple and the foot stomps and the waiting on people and hanging and forcing them to work more than they want to. Like, there were so many little tips that he got where it's like, okay, and then you can shift your weight in this way and that'll sag and that'll force them to work more. And
this clip reveals the hidden genius behind Strickland's seemingly ugly style. He's not just a brawler, he's incredibly astute at the nuances of controlling an opponent, utilizing those neglected aspects of MMA like subtle weight shifts, foot stomps, and constant pressure. This isn't about landing highlight reel knockouts, it's about energy management, making his opponent work harder for every inch, and slowly draining their will. Against Khamzat's high-octane, power-based attack, these dirty tactics could be invaluable. They force Khamzat to expend more energy in dominant positions, which directly plays into Strickland's long-game strategy.
The difference between Kevin Holland and Dricus is that when Dricus hit the floor, he tried a few times to get out, but then there was a level of acceptance that set in, and it's like, okay, we'll go again next round. Like he was thinking ahead over 25 minutes. Like, I can't try too hard in this round because we've got 4 more. Then we've got 3 more. Then we've got 2 more. And you see what I'm saying? Like, your opportunities run out. And if you accept after 2 minutes that first round, well, you know, here we are, I'm going to be stuck in this position, Chimaev's not getting tired. Like, you need to force him to work, right?
This distinction between Kevin Holland and Dricus du Plessis is critical. Du Plessis, in his fight with Strickland, essentially conserved energy, thinking ahead to later rounds. While strategically sound in that context, it allowed Strickland to maintain dominance without exhausting himself. Against Khamzat, Strickland cannot afford to make that same calculation. He must force Chimaev to work constantly, even from ostensibly inferior positions. Every scramble, every attempt to get up, every defensive effort is a withdrawal from Khamzat's energy bank. If Strickland can avoid that acceptance of being stuck, he increases his chances of drawing the fight into later rounds where his own endurance becomes a major factor.
Which I really liked because it's very descriptive of you know, death by 1,000 cuts. You know, like you watch his fight against Abbas. It's very similar to his fight against Fluffy. He forces them to run in sand. He forces them to work hard and throw. And, you know, to an extent, Nate Diaz did the same thing against McGregor in their first fight as well. He rolls a lot of stuff off his front shoulder. Very similar kind of defense. Robbie Lawler, another one. It makes you feel like you're punching someone really hard, but in actuality, most of your energy is being wasted and dispersed.
The paper-cut pace analogy for Strickland is brilliant because it perfectly describes his insidious, draining style. He doesn't go for the single, devastating shot. He accumulates damage and, more importantly, fatigue. His defensive style, rolling punches off the shoulder like Nate Diaz or Robbie Lawler, is designed to make opponents feel like they're connecting while subtly siphoning off their energy. This is a nightmare for a power puncher or relentless wrestler like Khamzat. Every takedown attempt, every shot landed on Strickland's guard will slowly but surely deplete Khamzat's gas tank, paving the way for Strickland to turn the tide in later rounds.
And that's why Strickland's been so effective, because most people can't deal with that style, that pressure. Most people don't compete at that range, and certainly most people don't spar at that range. Like, you watch most guys on the mat at the gym, and they're miles apart, right? You go into a boxing gym, and they're like nose to nose. It's very, very different. And Strickland brings that close range pressure in a very MMA style, which is not, again, like I said, and I've said this to Strickland, he knows it, it's an ugly style, it's weird, it's like the guard's kind of off and there's lots of holes in it, which is where someone like Alex Pereira can find a gap. But it's the right style for someone like Chimaev.
Strickland's ability to operate effectively in such tight, close-range engagements is a distinct advantage, precisely because it's so uncommon in MMA. Most fighters prefer space to strike or set up takedowns, but Strickland suffocates that space. While his style might be unorthodox and ugly, as the commentator notes, it forces opponents into a chaotic, energy-sapping brawl that they're ill-prepared for. Crucially, this is described as the right style for Chimaev, whose wrestling relies on explosive entries and control. If Strickland can keep him in that phone booth, constantly engaging and making every inch a battle, it directly neutralizes Chimaev's ability to launch his terrifying, long-range power attacks.
He's going to be incredibly important in this fight, of course. Now, Strickland's got decent takedown defense. He's got 76% takedown defense, and I always see that stat on UFC stats, and I go, okay, but what is that of? How many takedowns is that of? So I went back and I looked through his fights, and he's defended 49 takedowns, and he's conceded 15. And most of the time when someone comes into the cage with a wrestling game plan, more than half of their takedowns he shuts down. As soon as he feels like there's a wrestling game plan on the table, his brain tunes into it and he's very, very switched on. A lot of the time when he concedes 1 or 2 takedowns is when he's been caught by surprise because he's in the middle of a striking exchange.
Takedown defense will undoubtedly be the biggest X factor in this fight. While Strickland's 76% defense looks good on paper, the deeper dive into the numbers reveals a crucial insight. He's most vulnerable when caught by surprise during striking exchanges. This means Khamzat cannot just shoot blindly. He needs to set up his takedowns with feints and strikes, creating openings where Strickland's wrestling radar might not be fully active. However, once Strickland senses a dedicated wrestling attack, he's remarkably difficult to take down. This chess match between Chimaev's setup and Strickland's anticipation will dictate much of the grappling exchanges.
You can shoot power doubles because Chimaev does like a really powerful takedown. He likes to really drive across and force people to scramble. Strickland is going to constantly keep bouncing back up, though, if he gets taken down against the fence. So that's something else to consider. It might be worth wrestling out in the open. Using the center of the cage so we don't have those walls to go to is a real it's a real difficult thing for someone, an MMA takedown defense guy, to deal with.
This segment perfectly outlines the strategic dilemma for Khamzat: how to effectively get and keep Strickland down. Khamzat's powerful double legs are his bread and butter, but Strickland's resilience against the cage, constantly scrambling back up, is a major counter. This suggests Chimaev might need to adapt, perhaps attempting takedowns in the center of the cage where Strickland loses the leverage of the fence. However, wrestling in the open is incredibly draining, especially against someone like Strickland, who never truly stops fighting for position. This tactical adjustment could either be a stroke of genius for Chimaev or another avenue for Strickland to drain his opponent's energy.
The Dricus fight massively changed those numbers, though. And I had to go back and check these numbers again. Just for reference, so the most he's landed up to this point in one fight would be 124 strikes. He landed 124 in his debut against Reese McKee and then 124 against Gilbert Burns. He landed 529 against Dricus, which is a wild amount of punches. 529. He received 45. But what I find interesting about this, 529 strikes landed, 37 of which were deemed significant.
The Dricus-Duplessis fight exposed a telling aspect of Khamzat's grappling. He can control for extended periods and land an astronomical number of strikes, but the significance of those strikes dwindled dramatically against a durable opponent. Landing 529 total strikes but only 37 significant ones in a long fight isn't the terrifying power we saw against earlier opponents. It suggests that while he can dominate position, inflicting fight-ending damage from those positions might require more than raw output. This statistical anomaly offers a ray of hope for Strickland. If he can absorb the volume, he might not be absorbing fight-altering power.
Because I, especially after watching the Dricus fight, I don't think Strickland is going to accept the positions in the same way, right? I feel even if he feels like he's going to keep losing, he's going to keep trying. And this is where Chimaev can burn a lot of energy trying to control him. Now, if at any point Strickland does decide he's going to just settle down for a little bit, Chimaev has to do serious damage. Like, he's got to take money out of the bank in those early rounds, do damage to Strickland. The best case scenario, obviously aside from finishing him, would be to cut him really badly above one of his eyes, because then any time they're standing, that's working in Chimaev's favor as well, because the blood's running into Strickland's eye. There's a possibility.
This is where the fight dynamic shifts dramatically after the Dricus revelation. Strickland's refusal to accept an inferior position, even while being controlled, is crucial. It means Khamzat will be forced to expend far more energy just to maintain his dominance, let alone inflict damage. For Khamzat, the imperative to land significant strikes and cause serious damage in the early rounds is paramount. A nasty cut, especially on Strickland's face, could be a fight-ending scenario, working in Chimaev's favor, even in standing exchanges. Khamzat needs to be more surgical, not just dominant, if he wants to avoid a long, draining war with Strickland.
Chimaev, in my opinion, needs to open up with his significant strikes. If you've got 21 minutes and 40 seconds of control in the Dricus fight and landed 529 strikes, like that to me shows there's enough control to do more damage. And I think that's where if Chimaev doesn't want to keep having these 25-minute fights where he's controlling people, he needs to open up a little bit more. Maybe space out his attacks instead of just being so aggressive in the opening round and then falling off and focusing on control.
The ultimate takeaway for Khamzat Chimaev: efficiency over sheer volume. The Dricus fight exposed a blueprint for his opponents, survived the early aggression, and he struggles to deliver fight-ending damage over time, despite immense control. For Khamzat to secure his reign as middleweight champion, he must evolve beyond simply dominating position. He needs to convert that control into devastating, significant strikes that force stoppages or major advantages. This might mean pacing himself slightly, being more tactical with his energy expenditure, and delivering calculated, powerful blows rather than a continuous but less impactful barrage. It's a shift from terrifying volume to terrifying precision.